I'm going to talk a little bit about how we tie this Mecarty and why. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the terminating knot here. So this is the terminating knot on a horsehair rope, and different twisters. These are twisted, not braided. Different twisters tie this last knot differently. It's kind of the signature, because that's the only way to really sign a Mecarty. But that's about the only practical way. Like I said, there's different knots, but some version of this knot is about the only practical way to terminate these. So the reason I put it through, what is that? I don't know, 2.5, 3 inches, about 2.5 inches. The reason I put it about 2.5 inches out there before I start my wraps is that if you have this snugged up all the way right there, it sticks out like that. And when it's sticking out like that, it tickles the back of their chin on those little chin whiskers. And not everybody knows this, but those whiskers aren't really hairs. They're actually nerves. They're outside nerves, outside the body nerves. So they're really, really sensitive. And if you've got this where it's snug against these wraps, it'll stick out like that, and it'll tickle those horses. And I've seen a lot of times where people say, "Oh, this horse, he doesn't like a Hackamore. He just shakes his head, or yada yada, or this or that or the other, or having problems with it." Well, if you just tie this knot, these knots, tie your wraps to where this is down like that, and sometimes even a little more, then you don't have that problem. I've heard some people say, "Oh, you leave that out there so you can lead your horse around by that." That's nonsense. You'll pull the Hackamore off his head. That's not what it's for. You just leave it down there so it doesn't tickle his chin whiskers so much. So once in a while you get a really, really sensitive horse, and even with it being down like this, it'll still kind of bug them, and they'll get irritated and they'll get fractious acting. And some people tie them, then just let them out longer yet. And that works. I, for one, think it looks weird. And then I'm kind of always secretly worried that it might get caught on something, or I just don't like to have it down that far. So when I come across one that even having it hanging this low, it still irritates them, I tie it backwards. Like that. So somebody did there's a regular terminal knot underneath this, and then somebody did a fancy rawhide dealio on there, and I don't really like that, but somebody gave me the Mecarty, so I deal with it. So whatever horse I was riding last, even hanging down, it tickled that horse's chin. And I remember what horse it was Bunny, and she didn't like it, and she needs any excuse she can get to act a fool. So I just took it off and tied it around backwards. It's the exact same knot. Everything's the same. You just do it backwards. And so once in a while you'll see a guy, it's usually in the 1/2 inch or 2 rein stage where you're riding these Hackamores a little lower. You'll hardly ever see anybody do it like that on the larger diameters. And if they do it like that, chances are it's because either one, they don't know what they're doing, or two, they just think it looks cool and don't understand the practical purpose for tying it backwards like that. Or maybe even do understand, but still think it looks cool. But you'll almost always see it on 1/2 inches or smaller diameters yet when you get into your Bozalitas. A lot of the show horses that you'll see that are getting showed in a 2 rein, you'll see that those guys tie them backwards like that. Most of those show horses are going to be super, super, super sensitive type horses, for one. And then most of those show horses are going to have their chin whiskers shaved off, because that's what show people do. And when you shave off those chin whiskers, it makes them even more sensitive. And so they need to tie them around there backwards so the horse doesn't throw his head and act a fool. But when you see one tied like that, that's the reason why. And when you see one tied like that, that's the reason why. And if one's tied all the way where it's snug up against those wraps, and that horse is being foolish and being funny about his head, that's my first place. That's my first bet. That's the first thing I do, is want to go and adjust that and let it out 2-3 inches. And 9 times out of 10, that'll cure that. That's a wrap.